Hello and welcome to BonkTable. I'm Mass and this is another BonkTable battle report. And I'm once again, you know it, you love it, or you hate it, hopefully both. I'm playing Rollo Castle. What's that Dweghom Castle list that I'm basically fallen in love with, so big shout out to Judge Rollo. And my opponent today is City States, so that's going to be a lot of fun. A few things before we get into the list and everything I want to say is please like and subscribe. That's really it. I was told I should start doing that, and I was like, nah, they're adults, they can figure it out. And then I was like, nah, you gotta remind them. And I'm like, but they're adults, they can figure it out. I see my demographics. It's between the age of like 25 to 45. I'm pretty sure everyone in there can have a beer and smoke a cigarette. Like, they're fine. So, yeah. Let's get into the lists. Here is Rollo Castle. We have the wonderful Temple Sorcerer Warlord with the healing on the shit tickets. Love it or hate it. This game I actually didn't even use any of the shit tickets, even though I was collecting them. My wizards were not in optimal spots to heal stuff, basically. Like, there were some times where it's like, yeah, I'm set up to heal, but my opponent was just like, I'm going to deploy away from them. What's good and bad? The good part is you're making me just kind of waste one of my mechanics, what's really good. The bad is I'm taking over a side of the table because you're not interacting with me, and I'm like, okay, cool, if you're not going to be over here, I'm just going to start scoring zones and stuff. So I guess that's one way to do it. He's in a block of 5 Hold Ballista with the Herald of Magma. Still haven't got Aura of Death off on this guy. No one's bothered to run and engage my Hold Ballista, but still fine. But I am still running 3 Fireforge and 2 Steelforge. Steelforge, still really liking them. I think they're in a really good spot at the Defense 4. If they were old Steelforge at Defense 5, OP ridiculousness. At Defense 4, 5 wounds, Resolve 4, they're very interactable. Like, they're only doing like 13 attacks on Cleave 1s. Yeah, they're probably hitting all of them because of their Flux Power draw event, but they're actually pretty manageable because you can just tie them up with stuff or just get them into a fight with things. They're probably going to start winning a fight. Like, they're a pretty good MSU trader as well, just because of all the hits they're doing and the Cleave 1. But the nice thing about them is that they're that Defense 4 and Resolve 4 with the 5 wounds. Like, they're such a good brute. They are on brute stands, but they fill that brawler role really well of being able to take hits and deal damage back. So that's why I really love Steelforge. And they're also not oppressive like Ashen Dawn. So there you go. Fireforge, you know, Barrage 4, Range 14, AP 2. Gets a lot of work done. Even if they get engaged, they're Defense 4 with the shield and like Resolve 3. Even then, still happy. Then I'm running the 2 Tempered Sorcerers riding Hellbringer Drakes. A fantastic portion of the list is just them sitting on their Drakes, popping fireballs into people. I basically exclusively cast Fireball all the time. I should probably start swapping out for Corsigation if the regiment I'm trying to shoot at is, let's say, Defense 2 or less, just because my attunement is going to be 4 instead of 3, so I'll get more hits in. Yeah, my opponent will get a defense roll, but a lot of times, even when I'm rolling 3 downs on my 7 spell dice, I'm only getting like 2 or 3 hits, and I'm just like, yay! Where's those big, like, 7-hit, 8-hit fireballs that was happening before? Well, they're not really happening before because Tempered Sorcerers lost Arcane 1 through 3. They now need to take Focused, what is a mastery what prevents them from going on the Drake, so they're not re-rolling 2 of those fails. And yeah, it's basically it. Like, Parabellum has really toned down Tempered Wizard output for their offensive capabilities a lot to make them way more manageable. It's still very strong, but it's no longer the Tempered Sorcerer Warlord is killing 2 regiments a turn just by himself, and then his regiment's activating, putting a chunk into another regiment. So it's no longer oppressive, what's really good. However, I might start swapping out to Corsigation if the defense on the opponent's regiment is 2 or less, just because of Attunement 4, getting more hits, doing more resolve damage, all that stuff. And that's really it there. I don't really got much to say about this list. Like, I've played it a ton of times. Lately, like, this is kind of just what I'm playing. I'm still enjoying it. I'm still exploring it. My big issue with the list is that I kind of step on my own toes turn 2. You'll see it this game, and I'll bring it up when it happens, and I'll just talk about it and explain it all in more detail once we hit that point on turn 2. But because of the whole Ballista being 6 wide with the character, it's taking up a lot of frontage, and I want to have that frontage available for Hellbringer Drake, maybe some Steelforge. Like, it really takes up a lot of the frontage of the board there when I start running stuff up and I'm deploying things. So I need to figure out a way to be able to have the Hold Ballista forward and relevant, while having the Drake also being able to be relevant and start scoring. Because the Drake is kind of the thing I'm using to score early on, because it runs 14 turn 2 and then gets into the objectives turn 3, and I can start scoring stuff. I can just toe the zones, start popping off shots, and it wants to really be there. But with table setup and board and positioning of other things and how my opponent counter deploys, I'm starting to like find my Hold Ballista like holding things up, or kind of just like being in the way of the footprint of stuff, so I can't land, like, because I want to be in spots but I can't land on myself. So basically I have to figure out a way, how am I going to deploy this 6 stand long regiment and not step on my own toes? And I'll explain in greater detail when I hit that point, but that's kind of my issue with the list, and that's something that I am going to probably figure out and resolve as I play more games and get more reps in with the list and break it down more. So hopefully in the next couple games, I'll figure out how to do that and no longer step on my toes with the Hold Ballista regiment. So let's go and slow on my rules, like and subscribe, and pause the video whenever you want. And yeah, there we go. Really easy. It's 3 pages. Or just rebuild the list, really. It's not something crazy. Like, there's barely any upgrades on anything. Oh, and Tempered Steel Shaper has Memory Breath, or Aura of Death +1, so it's Aura of Death 3 for everybody. Yeah! Too bad I always forget about it because no one's engaged the whole Ballista. Let's go to my opponent's city-states list. Here's my opponent's list. He calls it PLWL. I think it's supposed to be Polemark Warlord. That's my guess. It's not power. It's not like PRW or PWR for power. So I'm like, meh, whatever. My opponent is running a Polemark Warlord with the Army of Lions. So I don't even remember what that does, but it does something. I do remember his battlefield tactics. Or his Army of Lions. Should start with A, you'd think. While the characters on the battlefield, stands including auxiliary, get the +1 to its clash. Oh, this regiment he's in gets +1 clash. In addition, they gain the Tenacious special role. So he's supposed to be active. So that's pretty good. It helps out with the problem in city-states about inspiring, because just increasing the clash gets around not being able to inspire. However, this Polemark is being ran in an Ogma block. So that is the mediums with cleave 1. They're the Cape guys. That's really the difference between them and the Thorkides. He has the Atlantia Spear, what gives him like +1 clash. It doesn't know. It gives him like +1 to hack and cleave 1. He's got Close the Gap for Unstoppable. He has Flurry. He gives Flurry, I think, offered the strategic stack into the Ogma. So he wants to be doing that. He has his 2 battlefield tactics. Let's talk about those. He's got Fight in the Shade. So volley actions, reroll successful hits of 1, and come and get it. Where the regiment the character stand is currently attached to gains Unyielding. Now, my opponent built his list around the... Where is it? I'll find it eventually. Hoplites, here we go. The Lockagos. So whenever the Polemark gives out a battlefield order, if that's either Unyielding or Fighting the Shade, any of the regiments currently on the table when he does his battlefield order will receive that buff as well. So his 8 block of Hoplites and his Thorkides will be receiving the buff. Now, because I'm playing a gunline list, my opponent exclusively picks Fighting the Shade to make reroll 1s. It's actually really good on his part and a smart play, because Dweg is volley 2 base and takes aim to 3 and rerolling 1/3, or I guess 1/3 of my successes, or even half of my successes potentially, so that I could end up with more misses, is really good for him to keep all his stuff alive. So I'm really gunning to get rid of this Polemark, or just kind of try and shoot his stuff with impactful shots before the Polemark goes, or just magic it to death because I got 2 wizards riding on Hellbringer Drakes. So I got some ways to work around it, but it is going to help him as the game goes on. So really good for putting Lockagoses and everything. He's also running 2 Minotaur Hespians. Scream at the table 16 inches with that Vanguard. You know, Brutal Impact 1, Cleave 1. They got some really good stat line. Going up to wound 6 has actually been really good for them. That 1 extra wound has been increasing their survivability a ton. Defense 2 of the shield for 3 isn't the greatest defense, because if you get flanked, you're down to 2. Any bit of cleave coming into you from the flank just starts ripping you apart even faster. Even with bigger cleave, like, Minotaur Hephaestians, like, they're really kind of surviving on their wound counter than really their, like, defense or evasion stat. The resolve's not bad at 3, but they do some good work back with their Clash 3 and attacks 4. So, I do like them. Strong regiment. Love them a lot. Hephaestian. My opponent mainly uses this guy as an anti-wizard because he just kind of keeps things that I'm trying to shoot with fireballs within 10 inches of him for that interference bubble. Hephaestian overall is a really great regiment. Hard on one, keeping him alive from like shooting and stuff, or even people stabbing him with like any armor piercing. You know, he's got some great work going on with his Cleave 3, and he can do his spell casting. But my opponent also knows that I'm just going to kind of rip him apart once he kind of comes at me and charges me as we go through this game. So we kind of play this like chicken game between the two of us, between me and his Hephaestian, while I'm just like blowing up other stuff and he's trying to reduce damage coming in with his interference bubble. So not the greatest use of 240 points, but he knew, like, when I was in a strong position where if the Hephaestian came into me, I would have, like, unloaded into it. Alright, let's talk about the next warband. So my opponent was really excited to play Companion Cab this game. He's got 4 Companion Cab. He's got the Apocaros. I'm going to butcher this name. Eparchios. I'm going to go with that until I get corrected. He puts the Blade of Icarus, or Icarus, on it. This is more commonly called the lightsaber. So this reduces your clash by 1, but gives you cleave 4. Is this the exact one? Hold on. Pretty sure this is. Why does it say he has cleave 1? Let me check, just to be sure. City states. Shows. Yeah, 6 attack space, yeah. Stone relics. Yeah, it's the +1. Oh, he also gets +1 to his clash. So he goes up to clash 4, loses 1 attack, and gets cleave 4. So why is it telling? Okay, well maybe the app's busted. So he should have cleave 4 right here. Not the end of the world. That's fine. He's got good impacts. He's got the inscriptions of impact resistance, what is a draw event on the character, what gives his regiment tenacious. A little bit of a workaround, but you basically just draw into the Apachos, then you like, entourage into the companion cab, and then do your work, and you go from there. Once again, 8 block of Hoplites, benefiting from the Locagos for the fighting in the shade. And then we got a unit of Thorkides with a Minotaur Thyrian who's hanging out, doing some good Minotaur Thyrian things. Fluid formation on them and the Ogmas is really solid, extends your threat range, especially them being base March 6 on a light. This is actually a really good light unit coming on first thing on the table. They're very maneuverable. They're not super durable because you're going to be losing all your extra stands, and then you're just going to be your command stand and your Minotaur Thyrian. And at that point, your opponent can kind of just hit you with something and kill you. So they're a little susceptible to shooting. They do have a Locagos, once again, for that fight in the shade bonus from the Polomark. However, like, their big problem is that all their stands, except for the Minotaur Thyrian, is 4 wounds. So they are very susceptible to chip damage. And once engaged, they usually get cut down. So they're going to do well when they kind of get into something and hit it, especially with that Minotaur Thyrian doing the work as well. So besides that, I'm going to slow roll my opponent's rules, pause the video at any time, do whatever you need to do to read stuff. I don't know, leave a comment and ask about something. Maybe I'll talk about it. Or maybe something I missed. So let's go into the scenario. Here's a scenario we're playing today. It's off balance. We have 2 enemy zones, 12 inches up and 6 inches up, as well as 2 friendly zones, 12 inches up and 6 inches up, and then we got 2 neutral objectives. Right there. With this, we get 4 VPs for killing the opponent's objective marker. We gain 2 VPs for every zone we score, 2 VPs when we are seizing 2 or more zones, or 2 additional VPs for seizing 2 or more, and then 2 for the warlord. So what kind of happens here is that people kind of make a play for, like, I'm going to draw a box in black. Kind of this. So they'll, depends on how this goes, they kind of, like, defend their stuff and grab the zone in between. Because, like, from this right side position, I'll use orange, you can spread out and hit this one. You can spread out and hit this one. And then you can kind of come in and take this later on as the game develops, or you just push over and take it. That's not how this game went at all. Like, I would say that's probably the more optimal one. I'm just going to get rid of all this. There we go. how this game kind of went, or how I also see another way. Like, maybe the first way is how maybe you should play it, like defending your objectives, take over that zone, take your opponent's objectives. But this one kind of played out more. My opponent and I both went for the middle. Like, we kind of went here, spreading out the middle between the two zones. So that left our, I'll use pink, our back objectives weak. Just because we're now further away from them, but they are further back on the table, so it's harder for your opponent to get there anyway, unless they have something quick. And then we kind of made a play for each one of us went for like one of these zones, and then the game developed there for a flank collapsing and us kind of battling it out and pushing for each other's objective markers, and then further into our opponent's objective markers. So I don't really like this second way, like how we kind of played it. I don't think that's really the right way to play off balance. I think the first way, where you kind of take over 2/3 of the board and defend your objectives and take over that zone, because from there you have a much better position to strike further back in to your opponent's side end zone to take their back objective, or that more middle objective that's for like what's closer to you. My other issue with the scenario is that the far back objectives, I'm just gonna clean this up again. I'll just circle them in green. These two guys are just so far away at 6 inches off the table. Like, I'd rather see them moved up to the 12-inch line. I'll use black again to be a little bit more relevant, because I just find them so far back that it takes forever to get to them, and the only time you're really going to get to them is like once you've secured everything the last 2 or 3 turns. And that's fine, but it's just like there's never a point where you can like just go snipe it out really quick like you can with the more forward objectives here. Like even then I would like to see those guys go up each 6 inches to kind of here. Let's use orange to make it a little different here and here. Just so that they're, you know, there's more of a fight for them. My other issue is kind of objectives as well, like just them in general, is that objectives take up footprint on the table, and you want to have some premium table space. And the objectives, especially the middle ones, I'll just circle in green. I'll call these guys the middle ones. I find they kind of get in the way as you move up regiments, because they're on that 12-inch line. And they are, what is it? 2.5, so they're stretching out 1.75-ish. No, a little less than that. So 1.1 or 1.25 either side of that line. Anything that has a banner basically can't run up behind them. And what I mean by that is, you can run up behind them, but you can't land on it. If you're speed 12, you can't land on it. Like, that's premium space that you want to use and be on at that 12, like that between that 10 and 12 line. For a lot of regiments, are usually March 5, March 12. They have a banner. They're going like 11 or 13. So being unable to deploy anything on that thing and reducing that space forces you to like put your regiments here or here, and you can never really centralize very well, so it just kind of sucks that way. So yeah, that's kind of my alright, well I'm leaving that in. Alright, so let's go to the table, we'll talk about it more. Alright, here's the table. We got my friendly objective and my other friendly objective, and we got my opponent's objectives. So looking at this now, I think this table is laid out wrong. Like, re-looking at it, I believe, just kind of eyeballing it, this distance right here looks to be about 18 inches. Because I can tell you this right now, that looks like about a foot right there. 12 inches. So I think this table is actually laid out wrong. That's not the greatest. Shit like that happens, you know, just check your tables. Like, I'm just literally realizing it now, like, thinking about it, this is just way far up the table. So for terrain, though, we got our hindering, obstructing forests just hanging out. We got some obstruction houses right here. We got our water. And then we got some broken ground, so charge it through that, you roll a 6, and if you roll a 6, you take, or a d6, if you roll a 6, you take a wound. If you're a cav, you take 2. And then we got another hill. Overall, not bad. There's a couple spots to hide. Like, the 2 woods are not bad to hide in or try and reduce shots from. This building in black separates the board a little bit for me from that left side, while this building, let's go with orange, separates the deployment and the board for my opponent. So it's kind of balanced out there. Especially with these objectives and buildings, these objectives being way further up than they should be. Kind of locks in that middle line. Like, I don't know. I just don't like objective markers because, like, I always got to walk around them, and in Conquest, due to the movement system, it's just really rough to, like, get things and fluidly get around stuff nicely. And because things march in a straight line forward, it's really tough to bypass something or move around stuff. So with that, let's go to turn 1, and we'll play it from there. Here's turn 1. I get my Ballistae and my Steel Shaper. My opponent gets his Thorakides and his Minotaur Espions. I deploy directly in the middle, and then I draw my Steel Shaper and get a token. My opponent then just eventually just runs up the table, across from us. The objectives are way too far forward because this objective should be, I'll just do it in green, should be like right here. So I actually should have way more room than what is there, while my opponent would be on his right now. So he would have even worse problems than I would. So I would still have to like double move to get over my objective and set myself up here for next turn, because 5 inches won't be able to get past the 2.5. But I kind of have that objective so far forward that I can kind of sit behind the objective and just shoot at anything that comes up. What was kind of my game plan with the deployment of these Ballistae, but as the game goes on, I feel like I really got to start picking up my Ballistae deployment a lot better. Like, I need to just drop them, I'll use orange, on like a flank, and just kind of have them deal with that flank and go for the zone. Like, them being so central reduces the bigger, more heavy lifting regiment in my army, what is the Hellbringer with the Tempered Sorcerer. Because right now at 10 inches, the Hellbringer Drake, I'll just do it in purple, touches the, like if he runs 14, will touch the front of the Ballistae, and I won't be able to deploy them. And then the Ballistae gotta like double run anyway to get it over the Hellbringer Drake, so I don't get like a march shot, because usually people just run forward and I hold the Ballistae back for so long that I can usually just like walk up and shoot them. So what I have been doing before is that I've been deploying my Ballistae about 9.5. Draw 9.5 inches. There we go. Perfect. And just allowing that space for my Hellbringer Drake. This game I forget to do that, and it kind of bites me, but my opponent doesn't take advantage of it as well as I think they could have. They have some other issues, but we'll talk about in turn 2, that kind of prevent them from taking advantage of this mistake. But this is the mistake that I need to work out more and learn and try and figure out how to resolve. And there's a couple ways, like going over it now, that I figured out how I want to do it in the future. So let's go to turn 2. Here's turn 2. Things would go really well for me as I get both my Drakes, both my Wizards, and a Fire Forward, so I drop over here. My opponent gets nothing except their auto in what is their Polomark Warlord and their Ogmas. So my opponent doesn't really want to get shot with his Thorakides over here, so he just kind of runs them up behind the objective. I go and I'm like, well, I've kind of screwed myself over with Hellbringer Drake deployment because I'm on that 10-inch line. I can't really like run forward another 10 because I'll have to, like, I'm trying to get over here above this objective, but I won't be able to sit there nicely, and then Thorakides will come and charge me and kill me, and I don't really need to give them away for free. I can make him come to me, so I'm just like, well, what if I just kind of like walk up a bit? And so I just kind of like walk up 2 or 3 inches and just get within 18 of the Thorakides, so that, you know, I'm just going to shoot them if they don't move or if they come at me, because I'm super far away. And that's all what happens over there. So not super exciting. So the first Drake, what is this guy, who I'm just going to put a red circle around, he is lined up on his base to touch that zone and score it. The second Drake, who is with this orange circle, is going for the same thing. Well, why is that? Well, because I screwed up my positioning with the Ballistae. I kind of want that second Drake to be over here so that he could threat project and cover the other zone, and just have both Drakes on either side of the Steel Shaper, so the Steel Shaper can be the middle and then the Drakes on either side. But the building that I'm going to circle in black for you is cutting me off, and I'm kind of like, this really sucks. Not the greatest. Not the end of the world. So I just decided to deploy that other Hellbringer over there, because my opponent only has 3 cards, and it's turn 2, and I have, I think, 7 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah. And I'm now putting pressure on him, and I'm going to be looking for the zones in scenario now, and, like, I'm going to see where he is, and I can hold back all these guys as the game develops, and then just get free shots into stuff. And set up on scenario. Like, he currently has nothing contesting the zone, so I'm like, well, if I deploy 2 Drakes over there, anything that comes at me, 2 Wizards, 2 Drakes should be able to kill it. Or hold it off long enough that I'll just win that battle, and I can reinforce with Steel Forge, or another unit of Fire Forge, any, you know, whatever I want. Or if my opponent realizes it's a bad idea and doesn't commit, I can lock down that right zone with 1 Drake towing it, shooting shots out into the middle, and we'll just, you know, he's going to be shooting that way. And then the Drake in red can also go that way and start marching his way across the table, shooting stuff, killing objectives, killing enemy troops, going for the objective. And we'll make him yellow. Actually, we'll make him purple. No, he can just go all the way to this zone over here. That's kind of my thought process at this point, accounting for the mistakes in positioning that I've made already with the Ballistae. So that's how that little movement screwed up so much more, and it's caused me to change plans a couple times on how to properly deploy. So that's my big issue with the Ballistae, is that I'm stepping on my own toes, and I got to figure out a way to deal with it. Fireforge get plopped down there because they're just there to shoot anything that comes into the zone. It's probably going to be the Zogma. And I'm like, yep, let's go to turn 3 and find out how this all develops. So, here's turn 3. Good things that do happen: get a unit of Steel Forge, get a unit of Fireforge. And I then have another unit of Steel Forge and Fireforge sitting in reserve. So I'm like, okay, sweet. My opponent just gets his Hephaestion in, autos in, and then once again rolls like 4 6s and 5s and doesn't get the other mediums in. I'm like, okay, well, now this is going to be in a really good spot for me. I'm just going to deploy and I'm going to start taking over stuff. So, first couple turns, it's me just like, these Fireforge run up. I'm like, yeah, I'll just run them up there, because if anything engages these Fireforge can just pop over and shoot it. Sweet! Why not? My opponent activates the Polemark, then my opponent activates the, I think I use the Dweg Wizard Steel Shaper guy over here in the middle. He just casts spells, like whatever. He moves his Ogmas up into the zone, you know, just right there. He's scoring that zone, so that's 2 points for him. Sweet, but I'm not really worried because I just walk up my Fireforge within 14, pop a couple shots into him. I think there's a stand in the back there down to like 1 health. I'm like, sweet, I'll just, you know, kill that next turn, start putting the pain into him. Steel Forge run up. I know his Hephaestion was coming on the table, I just didn't really know yet. And I'm like, well, Fireforge on the left are doing fine. I got another unit of Fireforge in the back who can go and get work done if they need to. I'm just going to run the Steel Forge right up behind the Ballistaes. They'll be fine. And then my opponent decides to receive the buff from the Polemark. So he's back here. He gets a buff. We'll do it in light blue. There's my sound effects. Onto those Thorkiti unit. What gives them March plus 5 for their charge. But he's 18 inches away from me. He can fluid, but so he decides to like march charge my objective. And that's why there's a dice there. And he ends up something like that. And he does a point of damage with the impact attacks. I'm like, oh, okay. Ballistae take aim, you know, shoot into him, like kill off a stand. Hellbringer Drake, take aim, shoot, do some stand. Fireball does some work. And he's left on like a couple wounds. And I'm like, all right, well, this Drake just runs up into the zone, wheels enough so that it can get the fireball into that thing and just wipe it all out. So they're dead. And I score a zone, and he did 1 point of damage to an objective, so that was not a really good trade. Our Vanguard was watching over off in the corner, and we talked about this later in the game where he was like, yeah, he kind of threw away the Thorakides onto that objective. Like, unless you're going to kill it with melee, don't bother meddling things, or just get the Hephaestion to do it because he can just one-round objectives. So in this one, I've just taken Thorakides for free, and we're tied on scoring. He's going to bring a ton of stuff onto the table, but I'm already in a really commanding position where anything that comes at me has play and counterplay. Like, he can take something and I can take it back, so we'll go back and forth until we draw out and end all our regiments. However, I have a gun line. He does have Find the Shades, that will reduce shots, so, but, you know, it's only 2 regiments currently left on the table on turn 3, as we go into turn 4 and everyone comes onto the table. Alright, everyone is here! The Avengers have assembled. I get my Fireforge and Steelforge again. Woo! My opponent gets his big 8 stand of Hoplites. Yeah, and then 2 Minotaur Thyrans, and then, Hephaestions, and then his companion cab with the lightsaber. So I'm like, okay, cool. Things are going off. Fireforge, just shoot Ogma, kill off 2 stands. Ogma's one of his last cards, but he eventually just, as you can kind of see, at some point, Hephaestions ran up behind Ogma's. Not a bad play. Ogma's ran up in fluid formation so that they could kind of try and zone me out here. They're not lipping the zone, but they're not really getting to me. I don't remember if he tried to march charge me and just rolled really poorly, or if he kind of just like moved up and didn't really want to get shot anymore. I then at that point dirtle around with this Fireforge unit. You know what? I'll just make it a little easier. They're in orange. They just dirtle around a little bit. I just kind of move them up beside the objective. I see his companion cav. Like, he ran these guys up, and I'm kind of like, well, Fireforge can't really get to him. He can't really get to me. I'll just sit here. Like, I have no reason to come forward. I drop my Steelforge where they are behind that objective, but in line with it. So if the companion cav ever hit the Fireforge, the Steelforge can then just swipe into the side of the companion cab and kill them. His Ogmas are on the zone, but he might like shoot them off and fight the Fireforge. The other ones with a shot at them. Steelforge are hanging out behind just to kind of like be there ready to fill the gap or just get into front to fight off some stuff. So I'm kind of just like, man, whatever. On the right side, my opponent, drops the Hoplite block. Both the Drakes, I believe they just get within 14, drop some fireballs into them. They just had to double march to get there. But I didn't go super aggressive because I don't need to. I already have control of the right side zone. The Steelforge that were behind Ballistes are now in front of the Ballistes because I'm trying to ward off the Hephaestion. But I have a bunch of Ballistes. They, just kind of like move up and shoot at him. I don't know if they really do any damage, but there's that. I think I do like 2 wounds or something. It might be behind his leg. But at this point, like, I've really locked down the right side. So this area in black is really mine. And he's committed really hard to the other side. I'm just circling in purple. But it's such a loss of board space that he has. And I'm in a really good position just to kill anything that comes into me. His Hephaestion just kind of rotates, puts out his interference bubble, so I'm getting less hits into the Hoplites. I think they take like 2 or 3 wounds, but they're still all fine. Steelforge just lined up there to be like, yo, come at me. Steel Shaper's just going to sit there and keep shooting at you, and eventually the 2 Hellbreakers are going to kill the Hoplites, where they're then going to rotate at least one of them over onto that side, so I'm going to start collapsing his right side flank. I'll just do it in... No, let's do it in brown. So, looking to collapse this flank over here and push this way, and kind of wipe that all out. He's really reinforcing his left side because he has a better game over there, but he still has to defend off his right side because I'm already in a scoring position. I'm already putting work into his stuff. I'm looking to kill more things, take more stuff, and just go from there. So let's go to turn 5 and see how this goes. So here's turn 5. Things that go well, a lot actually. Turn 5 is actually pretty good for me. I don't remember if I win the roll-off, but I know these Fireforge were my first activation, and they shot into the Ogma over here and got them down to 2 stands. And then my next card was, I think his next card was actually Companion Cab, who like March charged me over here on Fireforge. And I'm like, well, my next card is also Fireforge, because I was hoping to kind of double shoot the Ogmas, but instead I just used the back Fireforge to just kind of like shoot at them, but I rolled really poorly and didn't do that well. I just killed a stand, so I was like, okay, not bad, but also eh. He kills one of my Fireforge stands with impacts, and then, you know, my last card is also more Fireforge, who just like punch them, so that's kind of those fights over there. My Steel Forge, I march up 6. I think that was my third card, and he still hadn't activated the Ogma, and I was like, okay, what's going on? Like, he's done like his Polomark, he's done his Epochios and his Companion Cab. I'm like, okay, like Ogma should have gone, even if they're like, they had 3 or 4 stands, but now they're down to 2. And I decide to charge with my Steel Forge. I do a March charge because I need like a 3 or 4 to get in. And if I needed to roll, I probably would have failed and broken the Fireforge. And I'm like, not the end of the world. They're defense 4, they're resolve 4, they're at 5 wounds. Really good. You know what? I might even just kill off the last 4 wounds on the Ogma with the impact attacks. It's 6 impact attacks at Clash 5. This will work. This will be great. So I March charge in. I roll my 6 dice, get 3 6s. I'm like, okay, sweet. And then my opponent saves it all, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So didn't kill them with the Steel Forge on the impact attacks. Had a good chance to, but didn't do it. But I'm like, whatever. My opponent then rolls the charge, gets the Minotaur Hephaestions into me, loses out on his Clash and Impacts, does a couple wounds. His Ogma finally rally and fight back, do some wounds to me. And yeah, that's kind of really it, what's happening on the left side of the table. But I'm like, alright, Steel Forge, you know, kind of just live and kill off stuff, and Fireforge hopefully kill off the Companion Cab and just kind of form a wall. His Hephaestion just kind of hangs out. He does go for the charge into my Steel Forge, but he needs to get, I think, a 4, and he rolls less than a 4. He rolls a 1 and he moves up 1 inch, so now he needs like a 3 or something, and I'm like, oh, whatever. Let's stay go, shoot. My Steel Forge just kind of shuffle around a little bit because I'm kind of looking to get into the zone later. But I also just, like, there's Minotaur Hephaestions who have moved up and are looking to get into me. So, you know, it's kind of back and forth of, like, who's going to go where, who's going to go who. He does move his Hoplite block up to the objective. What wasn't the greatest of plays. He should have rotated it more because this right side Drake got shots into the side with the magic and the AP2 shots. So all the shots that happened were just auto kills, and I had saved up like 3 tokens. So I'm like shooting him at 16 shots. Did a ton of work. And then the other Drake does the same, and they get broken and shattered and they die. So now I've really locked down the right side and scoring that. Sweet. My opponent is still scoring the zone because he's rallied. I have 2 stands to his 3. He's got that Minotaur Hephaestion in the back there scoring it, so he's still getting 2 points there. But at this point, right side is secure. I gotta leave a Drake back there. It's not the end of the world, but that other Drake can, in orange, start his wonderful trip across the table, shooting things and helping out wherever he needs to go. Still trying to hold on the left side, doing a pretty good job. Right side's collapsed, middle's starting to collapse, and now we're going to go for the left side and finish her off. So let's go to turn, I think it was 6 where we're at now. So here's turn 6. Some of the wonderful things that happen. Steel Forge go, and they just inspire Clash, kill the Ogma and the Polomark, wiping them out. Super happy. Then his Hephaestions attack me, do a bunch of damage, and then his other Hephaestion, realizing that he's going to be losing that side, they don't march charge, but they just charge and clash me. They just do this big swing, get in there, kill off a ton of guys, and leave that one Steel Forge on like 1 health, and I'm like, oh boy. So that's not that great. However, to counteract that, so the Ballista shoot at the Hephaestion, killing it. It had like 3 wounds left, and it just falls to all the shots coming into it. That frees up the Steel Forge. You just kind of do a wheel and a march over here. They couldn't really charge the Minotaur Hephaestions because that building was blocking them, but at this position, I can get into the back next turn and kill them all off, so that'll be really good. My opponent does score this zone. That's fine. On the right side, I score the zone. I'm trying to move up and get the objective. Both my Hellbringer Drakes are trying to like touch the objectives. The one in the zone, he's got to wiggle some more to stay in the zone and shoot the objective, so he's got some more work he has to do next turn. But, you know, there's one shot into it and I can start nailing that down. Things going on the left. These Fireforge take aim and shoot at this Minotaur. Hephaestion unit does 5 damage but doesn't kill a stand. But, you know, getting work done. Maybe should have reformed and shot at the companion cab, because the companion cab clash and then charge my other unit of Fireforge, and my Fireforge just kind of slapped them back. So he's doing good work with that lightsaber and the companion cab with their offensive capabilities and getting in combat with a regiment that has low clash because they're clash 2, they have dread, I can't spire into them, so I'm kind of like, well, not doing great, but also I'm just swinging around with the rest of my list and taking over both zones. And he's going to be stuck behind my objective, and I'm just going to reform and keep shooting at him as he has to battle my objective, because he's going to reform, charge, do a wound, get shot. Next turn, clash, do a second wound, get shot. Third turn, clash, kill it, and then hopefully he charges me. Or if I win the roll-off, I'm going to just shoot him and probably kill him with the 3 rounds of shooting. Because these guys don't have very good defense into AP2. But that's really it for turn 6. Still in a really commanding spot. Let's go to turn 7 where we rickety wrap them up. Here's turn 7. First thing that goes, Steel Forge. Charge into the back of those Minotaur Hephaestions. Just completely wipe them out. They're dead. I love it. His Minotaur Hephaestion does a combat rally. I believe he like takes a wound and loses the guy on the back end. And then he fights the other Steel Forge, or the other Steel Forge goes and kills off this guy, and then he takes a wound and he's down to one guy, and then he's like attacking me on the side and eventually kills off the guy with 1 wound left. So I'm like, oh no, not the end of the world. But the good thing is I am now scoring this zone. Sweet. I'm also scoring this zone, and I kill this objective with the 2 Hellbringer Drakes. You can see that one on the right there wiggled around some more so I can get into range. They both shot it, and then the one Drake in the middle just kind of started moving. He's still heading this way. He's got work to do. So there's going to be 6 points plus 4, so that's 10 points this turn, and now I'm just skyrocketing in points because this is a very slow scenario. My Fireforge reform, and then just shoot into the side, doing a bunch of wounds, and then my Fireforge fight back. He doesn't do so well in the rolls, and I live with like 6 or 7 wounds, so he's going to have to do another turn of fighting me. But it's A-okay, because I'm just going to shoot him in the side again. And that's really it for turn 7. Kind of just wrapping it up at this point, scoring everything, clean up my opponent's army, and then moving on. So let's go to turn 8 and speed her up. Here's turn 8. Things that go on. His companion clab. Kill off my Fireforge. I forget if the Fireforge attacked first or whatever, but, you know, Fireforge shoot him in the side. I believe my Hellbringer Drake just marches over within 14 of this 1 Minotaur Hephaestion. And then the wizard just drops a fireball on his head and kills him. And I'm like, sweet. Scoring. My opponent has 1 health left on that 1 companion cab. He doesn't really have a way to reform and charge to the ejector to get to me. I have Fireforge who are just going to shoot him even if he gets to me. Steel Forge can just kind of get over there and just charge him to the side. So, yeah. Go to turn 9. And that'll be it. Here's turn 9. I think I might even win this roll-off, and I just shoot him in the side and kill him off. He only had 1 wound left. I scored both objectives. I killed his Warlord. I didn't use any of the tickets because none of my wizards were around his stuff, but he gave me a flank, and I took it. So let's go to score. Here's the score. My opponent gets 8 points. I get... Ooh, what is this? 32? Yeah, this is 32. And we end, well, it clunked up to turn her around 9, but that's fine. So, what can I say about this game? Gun lines are tough. My opponent didn't get a lot of his stuff turn 2 and 3, what does really suck. However, when that was happening, he probably should have just moved back off of the objectives. Dweghom is very slow. Like, we don't really have any double time or vanguard or fluid or well, it's on infernal automatas, but like most of the time you don't really have any of those things, those tools. So they're pretty slow. So if he just kind of backed up with the stuff that he had on the table and not just shot up Thorkides on turn 2 or 3 to just die, probably turn 3. Like, if he didn't shoot them up to just die to me, like, that would have been a better save for later on. They're a great flanking unit, and just to be around to get into a fight as the game progresses. But my opponent kind of threw them away for absolutely nothing. 1 wound on an objective isn't worth it at all. So that was a big one we talked about. And then him not getting any of his reinforcement rolls and just getting everything on turn 4. At that point, you kind of just have to start toning back the aggression because you have no reinforcements. You have nothing coming on the table. And so my opponent with his Ogma should have really just sat at the edge of his zone. Should have just kind of got, like, correlated his forces more. Made that punch on the left side. Hoplites got stuck between a building and an objective and could not really get to the Drakes very well at all. I think the Hoplites should have been deployed on the left side and just ran into the woods and then ran onto the objective. Like, they really just need to beeline straight for an objective zone and just sit on it. We were talking about moving the Polomark into the Hoplites because he'll give them more buffs. And they need the Polomark's offensive capabilities to kill anything that they get engaged with. They're very similar to how Dweghom Initiates in the Hold Ray work. So you kind of want to have that offensive character built in with the tanky regiment so that they have some killing power from the character and they'll slowly do work and stay alive, but also, you know, do that punch back and win the fights. Companion Cab I actually really liked. Companion Cab with the character with the lightsaber is just a cruise missile of death. It just does a ton of work. It was kind of like 4 or 5 attacks that would just kind of go through and cleave through everything and do a ton of wounds. So I was really happy about that and was like, oh, I actually have to deal with this. However, you know, I layered enough stuff and was getting enough shots into it that eventually brought them down. Companion Cab are very susceptible to range attacks. Companion Cab are susceptible from anything that actually has a high base clash or like leave or a bunch of attacks back. They're really susceptible to that because their defensive stats are worse than Household Knights. And so anything that can kind of kill them, like Steelforge would have probably killed them with Dread. Like, they would have just been Clash 5 League 1 and just ripped through Companion Cab. So Companion Cab are really looking to quickly kill kind of chaff regiments very quickly or tie up range regiments. Like, they're kind of good for that. It's something City States needs, and now they have it. It's good. I don't mind that they went on that side. If my opponent deployed them into the Hellbringer Drake, I would have just started burning tickets to reduce all the lightsaber damage, and then I would have just, you know, fireballed them and attacked them and eventually killed them all, and then had the other Drake support them. So he was kind of in a catch-22 because he had one side that was just failing and kind of just had to commit to another flank. But he couldn't get all his forces on me at the same time, and that's really what you need to do against the gun line, is you need to correlate all your forces and then give the gun line too many threats so that if they pick something and kill it, it's fine. You then have 2 or 3 other things that can just hit the gun line, stop it from shooting, and then chew it all up. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope everyone has a great day. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Oh, also, BonkTable has a Discord, and Cassandra has a Twitter. Oh, you gotta remember that. You can find those links in the description below. Have a great day. Bye!